Greetings, class, from the tip of the toe of Italy. Believe it or not, that little peninsula sticking out right over there is the westernmost extremity of Italy in the region of Calabria, the southernmost region of Italy. So this is the actual tip of the toe of Italy that's kicking out this other region of Italy called Sicily. We, my friends, are in the Straits of Messina. So that side's Italy. This side over here is Sicily. That's the town of Messina. This is the Strait of Messina. We are now going through its narrowest part, just 1.9 miles wide from one side to the other. Sicily is a region of Italy, Regionale Sicilia, all right? Just like Sardinia is a island of Sicily, but they're disconnected. They're island components. So Sardinia, Sicily, just like Virginia or West Virginia, United States, states of Italy, part of Italy. And here's the other thing I wanted to focus on. This is the Strait of Messina divides these two places, but it also connects places. Anytime things divide, they also sometimes connect. So behind us, we're heading almost due southwest right now. We're going just southwest, but mostly south overall. Heading from the Tyrrhenian Sea behind us into the Ionian Sea in front of us. And that's what is connected between these two places. And I love this place, and I'm mostly going to talk about Sicily here for a little bit because so much action has happened in this part of the Mediterranean, specifically around Sicily. What's so special about Sicily? It's not that big of an economy or big of a place. It's a popular tourist destination in today's world, but we don't think of Sicily as the center of the world. But it kind of was for a very long time, meaning Sicily is actually the largest island in the Mediterranean. And it's always been a much coveted geographic location in the Mediterranean for perhaps thousands and thousands of years. Seriously? Thousands? Yeah, as early as 750 BC, the Phoenicians and the Greeks were sending out their colonists to start city-states. And they did those all across North Africa. Around here in southern Italy is where a lot of Greek city-states started up, colonies, and indeed Sicily, which was colonized both by the Greeks and by the Phoenicians. Why is that important to understand ancient history? Because this island was so prized for its central location that everybody kind of wanted it, even though it wasn't that populated at any given point in history, including today. So the Greeks and Phoenicians had colonies on either side, and the Greeks eventually fold, and the Roman Empire takes over for the Greeks, and the Phoenicians, you may have heard of them back in the day, but they turn into the Carthaginian Empire, and the Carthaginians controlled virtually all of the northern coast of Africa, all the way up to parts of like now Spain and lots of different islands throughout the Med. So it was at a certain point, 200 to 300 BC, that Rome was starting to rise. The Roman Empire was starting to grow up and get bigger and consolidate power on the Italian mainland, on the Italian peninsula. Meanwhile, Carthage controlled all of the north coast, and what you have is two big empires starting to compete with each other, starting to rub elbows with each other. And where did those elbows get rubbed the most? Right here in Sicily. In fact, a series of wars broke out between first the Greeks and the Carthaginians, and those are the Greek Punic Wars. Punic is a Latin term that kind of means Phoenician, all right? That again turns into the Carthaginian Empire. So the Greek Punic Wars were the Greeks fighting against the Carthaginians for control of Sicily. That rolls over once the Greeks go away. The Roman Empire really starts to come into its own. That rolls into the Roman Punic Wars. And this is a series of wars that started about 264 BC and went to 146 BC. Three different sets of Roman Punic Wars that these guys beat the living hell out of each other on land, on Sicily, on the Italian mainland. But again, this is when Rome is starting to grow in power. The Carthaginians had a much better ass navy. So they controlled the waters, and you can just envision centuries ago that the Greeks and the Romans fighting on the high seas here, the Greeks and the Carthaginians fighting, and then ultimately in this series of three big wars over the course of 100 years, the Romans fighting against the Carthaginians in this very patches here in the Strait of Messina. And probably up to that point in history, the Roman Punic Wars were probably the biggest and deadliest conflicts that had occurred anywhere on the globe. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers and civilians died over the course of this over 100-year period. Now, why is that critical to understanding this particular strait? It's not. It's just a really cool place because really cool stuff happened here thousands of years ago. Guys rowing boats and hurling stuff at each other and boarding ships. All that action was occurring here in the Strait of Messina and all around Sicily. But it also was a critical turning point because the Roman Empire, having lost kind of the first rounds of the Roman Punic Wars, started to create a better navy. They were, for 100 years before, the Romans were building their land empire, and then they consolidated all of the boot that we now consider Italy as a country, right? But they didn't really go explore. They weren't out there taking over the Mediterranean just as yet. This is the turning point in which they're forced to, because they were losing the Punic Wars, so they focused on building a better navy for a century, and at the end of that, in 146, when they had a decisive victory over the Carthaginians and took over Sicily, that's when the Roman Empire truly kind of starts as an empire. And they go out and completely annihilate the Carthaginians after that. And again, it's mostly because they already had a wicked land power and then had a wicked naval power to back it up after that. They take over not just Sicily, not just Sardinia, but they do crush the Carthaginian Empire in its entirety and take over the north coast of Africa. And thus, when you look in the history books for the Roman Empire, it was all around the entire Mediterranean coast, from what's now Spain, all of North Africa, of course Italy, what's now Greece, all the way over to what's now Turkey, Israel, those areas, Egypt, all of that was Roman Empire. And all of this area, the entire Mediterranean that is, would have been called the Roman Lake. Just the Roman Lake. Our lake is what they called it. Nostrum Lake. It's our lake because the Roman Empire was so badass. Now, to conclude this is about the Straits, obviously, but I've been mostly focused on Sicily. The bizarre thing is that Sicily has gone through a series of rulers since then. The Roman Empire crashed in the 5th century AD, 476 if you want to attach an exact date to it. And since then, off and on, different powers have taken over Sicily. Again, I keep coming back to the geographic point. Why would that be? Look at a map. Sicily's kind of in the middle. It's the biggest island in the Mediterranean. It's kind of in the middle. It's a strategic place that you can launch and move around in lots of different directions. Even into modern history, Sicily's been important. Did you ever hear of this thing called World War II? See, the Italians sided up with Nazi Germany, so they were the bad guys. And then the Frenchies and the Brits, we came in to help them. We were the good guys. And there was actually a Sicilian campaign. U.S. forces coming in from this part of the planet to take over Sicily, then southern Italy, and then over the course of the next 2 years, move up the Italian peninsula, which Mussolini's fascist regime collapsed pretty quickly. But they had to fight town and city all the way up the spine of the Italian Alps to get into Europe. That was the southern front, and you had the western front coming in. So this whole area has been of strategic, military, and cultural value forever, even up into modern day. I would only add that it's also fascinating in that we're going to pass by Mount Etna here soon. And we'll cut footage here in just a second. We'll come back. We'll get some good footage of Etna. Mount Etna on Sicily is the largest, most active volcano of Europe. And it is one of 3 very active volcanoes within a 50-mile radius of where we're standing right now. Earlier today, we passed Stromboli, an active little island volcano. The one we couldn't see from the ship is Volcano. It's the actual name of the island, Volcano. That's awesome, right? And Etna is the biggest by far of all the active volcanoes in Italy. It's under, it's like 10,922 feet, something to that effect, plus or minus 50 feet. So it's just under 11,000 feet. It's the highest, it's the most active, and Etna routinely just blows its top, or even if we're rolling by it at night, you might be able to see little sparks and embers and steam and a little fireworks display. So Europe's most southern, highest active volcano here in Sicily. Sicily itself, a central island, tactically, militarily, since ancient times, and perhaps will be again someday. Right now, it's just an awesome tourist destination. It is a cool place to hang out. It's a total chill place, although there is, of course, a heavy mafia presence, as is the Sicilian mafia you might have seen depicted in films like The Godfather and places like that. There's also the, I said this region over here on the Italian side is Calabria. There's the Calabrian mafia too. And they've actually talked for on again, off again about building a bridge between these two areas, because why wouldn't you? It's only 2 miles, right? But it's been decided that it would be a $3 to $6 billion project, and it's Italy, so it might take anywhere from 500 years. But also, the greatest beneficiaries of building a bridge between these two places would be the mafias on both sides, who are like, yes, you should definitely build a bridge because we're the mafia, and they're going to probably profiteer off of it heavily, and it would connect the mafias like never before. So suffice to say, they have not built that bridge yet, and they probably won't. And maybe for good reason. As I pointed out, this is also an area of active volcanism, which means they also have earthquakes. So why the hell would you put a bridge in an area where 10 miles down the road is Europe's biggest and most active volcano, Mount Etna? So that's what we got from the Strait of Messina, right exactly in between the actual toe of Italy, right there. That's the toe, right there, and the the easternmost edge of Sicily, which is the football that the Italian toe is kicking. Hope you learned something about this part of the planet, and party on.